Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for participating. We're here at another episode of Spirit Gateways Inquiry, where we're sitting down to talk one-on-one with Ayana LaHue, founder, creative director, and chief evolutionary officer of the Spirit Gateways Institute. And Ayana, all of our other episodes are always so illuminating and exciting and revelatory. I learn something new each time. Tell me, one of the things that we haven't talked about is emotions. How does emotions play into this whole thing of ego operating system, true self operating system, tribe transformation, the work through liberation roadmap? How does that whole thing all play out?
The moment I discovered that emotions is E equals motion, and of course, as someone who loved movement and loves movement, all of a sudden it started making sense that if the emotions are moving, if I could just let them begin to move, I could experience what was underneath me. What I discovered, I'm going to fast forward, is that the emotion that a person feels is not who they are. The emotion is what's covering over who you truly are. So much of the inner work that's being done right now and for the last few years has a lot to do with releasing this emotion, and that when you contact that emotion, you now know that you're allowing your emotion to be, and you allow that you are giving yourself permission to own your anger or to own your grief. And yes, we own that anger and own that grief and all of the other feelings that go with being human, sorrow, joy. But the moment that we identify with an emotion that that's who we are, we create another barrier to that spiritual oneness state. The emotion is what could bring you to wanting to experience the Spirit Gateway's 21st Century Liberation Roadmap. You might be just fed up with feeling really lousy, depressed, sad, heartbroken. We all go through heartbreak. How do we, maneuver, go through heartbreak? Moving through all of these emotions naturally happens in the Spirit Gateway's work because you are you are accessing the true light that is within you that is being blocked. When the light is free and shining, we can feel the feeling. We're human, but we're not identifying ourselves with that emotion. So for instance, anger is a huge, huge emotion to know in oneself. And I was so blessed to have a mentor back in the 1980s who did deep anger work with me. And she ran a clinic. And besides her being a mentor for me, the agreement of me being hired in the clinic to work with patients had to do with me doing the same core work as the patients would go through. And so it was there that I recognized my clairvoyance and all the clairs, the audient, clairaudient, clairsentient. And I could see where the original break happened in a person. And part of the training was helping a person access their anger. So I went through deep anger work, ranging from, yellow pages, really thick yellow pages, opened, and I was given a black hose, a plumbing black hose, and I was given the opportunity to get in touch with my deepest raw feelings and move my rage, really move it. and get in touch with that I was even angry, and understand that that anger was blocking my power. And I graduated from that work with the commitment of helping my students, my clients, to be able to feel and know their anger without having to, break yellow pages apart with their bare hands. And there was a place for it, but that was decades ago. And I'm into having the whole self stay whole while the breakthrough is happening. So E equals motion. You're moving through the energy that's holding the emotion in place, and you're becoming aware of it. The Spirit Gateways experience opens your intellect, meaning the thinking mind. I'll use the word thinking mind over intellect, because to me intellect, and gosh knows I have a strong intellect, but my heart is more developed and strengthened at this point, because I found that it's through the heart center that I really could come home to my own soul, my own being. And the emotions are guideposts. Emotions in Spirit Gateways are milestones. Like, wow, I'm feeling really sad. And what is it inside of me that is yearning to come through? And you learn the tools to be able to see and access, to know what it is you're yearning to come through. You become self-sourcing in the Spirit Gateways work. And the emotions are gateways. They're not the final destination. And they're super important because we're all human. And we're living in an age where feelings are being shut down.
So could you actually share just a little bit about the distinction between emotions and feelings?
Yeah, I can feel something. I don't know if it's really true or not, but it's a feeling I have. And it's easy to turn the feeling into an opinion or a judgment. And so then once you take away the opinion, the judgment, the criticism, what you're left with is yourself. You're left with, oh, I have this feeling. Okay, what emotion is really here that's needing to move? And it always has to do with being seen, heard, or received. And this circles into anger. Working with anger through the Spirit Gateways journey, you really learn how to see, feel, and receive yourself. And that is what heals the core of anger. And so one doesn't need to, be in a padded cell to release their anger, but some people do. And I was given that gift to work in a padded cell, like all of the people who were in this residential clinic that was a holistic clinic. Mm-hmm.
So I have another question that it's kind of difficult. There are some practices that people have used for many years that almost in a certain sense they give you the feeling that you don't have to deal with your emotions, and that you can transcend them some way and transcend your experiences of early childhood, or transcend feelings of abandonment or betrayal or being rejected. And there's a common term called spiritual bypass. And I'm just wondering how you look at that in Spirit Gateways. Because the spiritual bypass is a big thing. If you think you're on a spiritual path, you have this idea of what this is, whether it doesn't matter, Buddhist, yogic, Sufi, Kabbalah, it doesn't matter what kind of tradition it comes from, But you can be on that path for many years and all of a sudden realize, I've really been bypassing what's really at the heart of true spirituality. Just how do you deal with that in the Spirit Gateway?
I embrace it. We all bypass at some point. We all try to get away with as much as we could or deny it. or what can happen is that through opening up spiritual energies, it builds the ego self. And that's what's happened, especially in the United States, is where the ego identity has grown. And it's so easy to attach onto the ego self and think, oh, I'm awakened now. And when you're really moving through into the source of yourself and coming home into yourself, you don't really know where you are sometimes. A lot of times. It's not like I've always known where I am, but I've had to be shown inwardly through, I'll call it the grace of God and the grace of those master beings inwardly who have gifted me this experience of breaking through, not getting caught in the emotion so that I can give it to others. The bypass experience is natural, and so there isn't any judgment or that it's wrong, because sometimes, like in relationship, we have things come up and we don't know where it's coming up from. For instance, being in a sexual partnership or falling in love with someone and having sex with them. Sex will bring up our deepest core wounds. And a person who is self-sourcing and choosing to be self-responsible will track what's coming up inside of themselves and not put it out on their partner. For instance, after an orgasm, a person can feel exhilarated and full of joy. Some people feel anger that emerges, like an hour, for instance, after an orgasm, because it's now stimulated the root center, the space between the pubic bone, tailbone, that root energy system in our body, and also the lower belly that I call power point centers, the second power point center. It is a power center. And if you had an experience in your early childhood or any time in this life where your emotions were made wrong, your life energies were made wrong, you were abused, you were stolen from, your energies, your light were taken from you by someone else who used your light, used your energy, physically, sexually, emotionally, spiritually. And it creates a wound, it creates the gap, and we want to bypass that pain. And so bypassing the pain is what's underneath all of this for all of us. And so pain, moving through pain, embracing the pain, understanding the pain, compassionate, loving the pain, not getting stuck in the pain, and creating one's life not from the reaction to the pain, and staying in that suffering mode, but learning through our suffering and then emerging through it. Spirit Gateways is a powerful experience of inner dying to the false self into the true self, that rebirth. And there can be cathartic aha moments, or it can just kind of go, oh wow, this is what's happened to me, and I feel totally differently. My life is totally different. I've watched people that I work with, their whole life opens up in a few months. And all of a sudden, like I shared in the last interview, the internal gifts that are there emerge. You don't have to take a course on, how to be a better leader or how to access this. When you really strike gold inside yourself, it happens.
So again, we come back to this integrated, holistic experience, that it's not the mind and the body and the emotions. That the work of Spirit Gateways is to look at all of this from a oneness perspective, and to move out of that experience of duality, of separation, into that experience of oneness. I mean, is that state of oneness something that you drop into and is there forever? Does it come and go? What happens?
Wow, that's a great question. I could feel myself being pulled out of oneness state when an inner wound within inside of myself is highly triggered. Let's say I'm in a situation that's happened at a time in my life. I was really judged by multiple people, and that brought up lifetimes of being judged and persecuted for being the light that I am and that I was. And the pattern in humanity to judge others, to criticize others, to humiliate others, to put others down is a bypass. It's an avoidance of oneself. And so to be self-sourcing and responsible, meaning take the word responsibility, shift it, the ability to respond to what's happening inside of yourself is really key. So circling back around, instead of putting one's reactions onto a partner or in a business situation or into life, it's actually learning to source into that core truth that lives in every single person. There's not one person on the planet that doesn't have that, but there isn't a way that's being taught to help people access that true self. And so it's more and more challenging for the collective to comprehend, interpret, recognize, and see what is truth. And if we don't find it inside of ourselves, through the wound, through the emotion, and be able to know you're going to come through. And that's something that is one of my key mission statements. I'm always at your side, and I won't let you fall through the crack of your own fear and not knowing who you are. You will come through the birth canal.
So one of the things that you and I have talked about at length in other conversations is this idea of seeing for real. Seeing for real. Mm-hmm. So, you know, there's 9 billion plus people on the planet. There's 9 billion plus states of consciousness. Mm-hmm. There's 9 billion plus ways of seeing, quote, reality. Mm-hmm. So explain to me, and then we'll kind of wrap up today's session with this part of the conversation. Explain to me the state of duality and the state of oneness and this idea of perception and seeing for real and seeing truth. Because in the back of my mind, I look at this, and there's social systems and political systems that play out based upon perceptions of reality.
Yes.
And we live in a time period right now where that level of polarity is very, very expressed and very extreme in its expression.
Yeah.
So
very
explain
big.
to me a little bit about how you think about that whole thing of seeing for real.
When you shift your mind into the heart, and then from the heart, which is part of the journey through the Spirit Gateways Be Light meditation, really through all of the aspects, everything works together. You're literally shifting your inner eyes into your body, and it's an unfolding experience so that you are seen through your whole self. And first got the visual image of it was an old painting. I believe it had Sanskrit words underneath it, and it was a head, a human's head with eyes all around the head, and the fascination of, wow, what is that depicting? How can someone really see? And how do you know when you're seeing for real? There is an inner confirmation system in this greater human new paradigm that sees, feels, and knows. It's like, how do animals know when a storm is coming? How did I learn about changing weather patterns when I come to the ocean and in this kind of environment. And there's pelicans that fly by. I learned that the pelicans know that they sense there's a weather pattern that will change. They're telling me. And nature works that way. Animals sense and feel and know. And we have within inside of ourselves all of the animals of all creation. We have all creation within ourselves. We're not separate from anything. We are one with everything. And so the approach I'm been guided to take, because it works. If it doesn't work, I won't do it. Is to go into oneness. And the oneness is inside. It starts small. The oneness is being one with a part of yourself, for instance, that's been hurting, that needs to be listened to. You know, it starts off with the part that we had to leave, and it often shows up as the inner child. But it's not necessarily just a child. It's a part of your being that got left behind, for instance, when you're 6 or whatever age it is. So you're navigating your journey through coming through these gateways, through the barriers, through the old system that you begin to recognize. Like, I can recognize if I slip out of the oneness, if I'm triggered or someone is blaming me. I've had to learn how to, meaning like not owning their anger, let's say, and projecting anger out because they want something. They can't have it. They need it. And their ego isn't bringing it to them. And they're angry because they want it. And so all those patterns in all of us, every pattern is in all of us. And so that ties in with the tribe transformation. We are humans evolving together. And there are times to have that personalized, one-on-one focus and the balance of working in a group to go, wow, I'm really not that alone with what I'm going through. We all want to feel a new presence, a greater love. We want to be able to live that love. And so if I, in the past, and I'll say if I slip in the moment, I've learned how to not let go of the source of my truth, my light. And so I've had to face, for instance, the wounding I went through, having a mother who constantly worked to undermine me, and the inner courage that I had to choose, I had to find to choose my life and not live for her, because that was her soul contract with me that I did not fulfill, that she wanted her daughter to live for her and give up my life for hers. And in that great conversation we had many decades ago, and she said, I want to tell you why I've been so angry at you. And I got my attention, and I said, yeah? And she said, the reason I'm so angry at you is because you chose to live your life and not live your life for me. And I was like, oh, thank you. After so many moments of trying to find the answer and knowing it wasn't me that was creating her emotion, but I was raised to think that her emotions were my fault. And in that moment of her revealing herself, and I looked at her, and with all the love in my heart, I said, Mom, I came into this lifetime to find me and to live my life and to fulfill why I'm here. And she was silent, and all I could do was love her and understand that was her need, to sacrifice herself to be a mother so that she could get what she wanted. And then when I had children, I have 2 daughters, and was raising them, it was such an incredible inspiration for me to go, wow, what is the greatest role, the greatest surrender I can be in to raise these two daughters. This is for them. I am a vehicle for God, for light. I'm just here to keep them connected to the light that they are and to be true to themselves. And when they're not being true to themselves, to know they can come back to themselves. And so whatever we find that we have to awaken through from our family lineage, we can give ourselves the new opportunity, the ways that we respond in our life, whether it's in business, family, relationship, our sexuality, parenting, whether we are an artiste, an inventor, a scientist, whatever your profession is, we have the opportunity to be able to shift into being really true and aligned and live in that alignment of being one in ourselves. And the reason my podcast is called Be One, Be You is that it's filled in the podcast information of how to enter into being one and being you. And my mother's and my relationship taught me a lot, but it taught me that all of us choose what we want. And then just to complete this emotional sharing about my mom and me, that many years ago she looked at me and she said, you know, I'm not going to work on myself in this lifetime. I'm going to do it in my next lifetime. And she was really matter of fact. And in that moment, I went, wow, this is amazing, such a great gift. Because all of us, all of the 9 billion people on the planet, we all have our choice, whether we want to, as my mother said, keep her head in the sand. She said, I'll be an ostrich in this lifetime. And here she has a daughter who's an innovator and a pioneer in bridging the creative and spiritual arts together and to find a way for humanity to live in oneness without having to rely upon religious beliefs, but to break free. And such contrast. So I want to invite all of you to embrace your contrasts and know that no matter how difficult your life is, or the social, economic, or family system that you are in, whether you have billions of dollars, little money, or a lot in between, know that there isn't anything that's really blocking you except what's inside of you. And yes, I've worked with both spectrums and all levels of manifestation of one's soul in this lifetime. From being your everyday regular person who, what I mean regular, is that you work hard and you're seeking hard and you're doing your best, to individuals who have based their success levels in their life by creative brilliance and what it takes to live in that union of creative brilliance and to stay whole and not pulled out into relying on the ego self, into identifying with how much money is made. Money is a tool, and that's a whole nother conversation of the currency of money and what energy, what power it really is connected to. Because it's either connected to ego operating system or true self-operating system.
So what I love about what you're telling us, telling our viewers, is that there's a foundation here of moving from understanding the ego operating system within ourselves and understanding the opportunity for a true self-operating system and moving, in that you go through these oscillating waves where you're more one than the other at times.
Yeah.
Until eventually, at some evolutionary state, you get stabilized.
It can happen pretty fast. I'm finding that all of you younger generations and someone who's been doing this work for 45 plus years, I find that you can stabilize a lot faster than your elders, and that the different generations have different stabilization levels.
Well, there's clearly a different vibrational frequency on the planet now than when we were kids who starting this, right? And,
Yeah.
and that's a whole different conversation, because I believe that what you said is correct, that there is greater opportunity. The frequency of the planet is higher now, and there is greater opportunity if you're aligned in this direction to move very, very quickly, very
Yes.
rapidly, and achieve that state that you want, and which is in contrast to this whole other sector of society that is, well, let's say a little bit more static in their perspective of life and themselves. But what I'd love to just do in sort of a wrap up today is also recognize that this is both at the core of religion and also transcends what we think of as religion.
Yeah.
That the heart of what you're talking about is really that connectivity between you as an individual, or me, or anybody, any of our listeners, and their connection with, you can call it divine source, you can call it creative intelligence, you can call it God, you can call it whatever. Many traditions call it many, many different things, and they describe it somewhat differently, but they all have a core, essential way of describing that connection, a deep, essential connection between what it is to be human and what it is to be divine, and to be connected with that divine source.
Beautiful.
And so that's yet another thing to unpack in one of our another sessions to get another episode of Spirit Gateways Inquiry. So, Ayana, I want to thank you again for yet another illuminating,
Thank you.
another time that we've shared together.
Thank you.
Thank you to our audience for bearing with us, participating, enjoying, relishing, staying to the very end, because this is an extraordinary journey that we're all on. All of us are on this together. We're on this individually, and we're in this together collectively. And all we have to do is look outside ourselves and see what that really means. See how that collective embodiment of consciousness is coming into the world right now, and has been arcing ever onward for the last 40, 50, 60, 75 years. It's wonderful to see, and it's wonderful to see what we're emerging into and what we'll create. So again, thank you very much for joining us in the Spirit Gateways Inquiry, and Ayana, thank you.
Take good care of yourself. Thank you. Thank you.